I guess summer must be coming because you hear the people splashing in the water and everything. Now, you notice none of them were me. I am, in fact, still in my warm, cozy clothes because I don't plan to start swimming till summer. But this, nevertheless, is the Swimming Upstream Radio Show. I'm Dorothy Wilhelm, and this whole series of podcasts, which has been going on for 12 years, so you'd think we'd be getting somewhere, this whole series is developed around the fact that the world is just full of wonderful people doing wonderful things. And you're not going to meet one of them on the 6 o'clock news, where you're going to just hear the dreadful things that are happening. So given that, our first wonderful person today, this is so good. We have the Lincoln Guy is here, and Larry Fowler. I am proud to say I even have some little hand in your being the Lincoln Guy, right?
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. You were the one that made it happen.
What did we make happen?
Well, I had been called the Lincoln Guy by somebody, and when I told you about that, you said, I don't ever want to hear your name when the Lincoln Guy is not associated with it.
See, now, isn't that funny? And it is perfect. And you know what's funny, too, is just looked it up. And the Wikipedia, we know, as you know, a very, very reliable source, says that the Lincoln car is the least reliable on the road. So the Lincoln Guy is listed officially, one of them at least, as a car dealer. Not you. It isn't
not me.
you.
Okay, good.
It's all right. But I did look to see, and it looks like you're okay.
They don't say anything bad about me on Wikipedia, I guess.
No, actually, you know, they give them credit. They've been working at it a long time too. So I kind of like them. But anyway, you're the Lincoln Guy I'll take full credit. But what have you been this must mean you have written about Abraham Lincoln. We all think, here's the deal with Lincoln. We didn't need you because everybody knows all there is to know about Abraham Lincoln, don't they?
Actually, they don't. And one of the reasons is that this is an interesting thing. It's been, to me, it is at least, and that is the fact that in order for something to make it into history, for the historians to deal with and to tell us about, it has to start with journalism. And journalism being basically the contemporaneous, reporting of what's going on in the world. There were a lot of people that had a huge effect on Lincoln that were not considered to be newsworthy by the journalists of his day. Therefore, we don't know about them today, and we don't know about their influence. And some of these people, two of them in particular that I write about, I devoted a whole book to each of these two people. One was his valet, and the other one was an army nurse. The two of them answered probably two of the top 4 questions that plagued Lincoln his whole life and freed him up, just intellectually, spiritually, emotionally, to be able to prosecute the war. But I always start with a picture of the nurse in particular, and I'll say, why her? And, and then nobody answers. And I say, why her? And then somebody finally asks the question, well, who is she?
Yeah.
Well, she was probably, Lincoln said she was the best friend he had.
And I know nobody knows that. I mean,
right.
I just, since you wrote about it, they do. But right. She was, I know you wrote a book about her and her influence. If I were you as a writer at this moment, I would give a plug for the book.
Oh, you would? Well, thank you for suggesting that. Lincoln's Angel is the name of the book. And it's the story, actually a novelization of the life of Rebecca Pomeroy, a woman who Lincoln was able to identify as being the person that was best suited to help him through the intense grief that he felt when his 11-year-old son, Willie, died in the White House. And she also helped carry the burden of Mary Lincoln and her grief over that time. But there was I like to just to sum it up this way with her, and that is the fact that Lincoln struggled with religious concepts or theology his whole life, from the time he was a boy until almost the time that he died. And the night that Willie died, he broke down, and he was in the sick room with the nurse and the youngest son, who had survived the fever, but he was still struggling with it at that time. And he heard her story, and he said, "Oh my gosh," he said, "were you always able to say, 'Thy will be done'?" He said, I'm struggling mightily with that question right now." And the backdrop of it is the war was going terribly. He had lost two of his closest friends in battle just months earlier. His wife was under investigation by the Congress for treason. Nothing was working right for him at that moment in time. And then he loses his son. And so he's essentially on his knees, just, weeping. And her answer to the question was, how do you know the will of God? Were you always able to say, 'Thy will be done'?" She said, "Not on the first blow, not on the second blow, not on the third blow, and not on several more that came after that." And he was pretty good at ciphering, as we called it, arithmetic. And he figured out, well, gee, I had this many, I had so many tragedies in my life, but my goodness, you had twice as many. So I'm not going to go to the pastor of the Presbyterian Church and ask for any more of this spiritual counseling. I'm going to ask you, because you seem to work through it. And so that conversation, the evidence that conversation had a profound impact on him, and that it was ongoing through his whole administration, the rest of his administration, is found in several places. One of them is a private memorandum he wrote himself about 6 months later, and it was found in his drawer when he after the assassination. But it's called the Meditation on the Divine Will. And in that, he says, he leads off by saying, we have two sides in a great conflict. Both claim to read the same Bible, to pray to the same God, and to be on God's side. He said, logically, one side must be wrong. He said, but possibly both sides are wrong. He said, nonetheless, the will of God prevails. And that became his rudder through the rest of his life, and it's proven by the fact that it found its way into the Gettysburg Address. It found its way into the second inaugural address, and almost verbatim in both places.
Tell me, I'm not placing where it is in the Gettysburg Address.
The Gettysburg Address. He leads off by saying that by quoting the Declaration of Independence, that we're all endowed by our Creator. But then he goes into the consecration of the cemetery. He said we cannot consecrate. We cannot. He was to that poetry, and in the middle of that poetry is his reference to the will of God. So that's, and I don't have it. I didn't memorize it tonight. But anyway, but it finds itself there, and very clearly it finds itself he says it directly in the second inaugural address. He repeats that memorandum. So the point is that yes, there are people who had profound impact, and whose impact answers questions that people have always asked. People always wondered about Lincoln, his religion. He's the only United States president who never identified himself with the church.
Well, and the thing I've always wondered, mostly, especially from listening to you talk, is that I have the feeling that we misunderstand Abraham Lincoln. Have we made him who we wanted him to be rather than who he really was?
Oh, absolutely. And it started with his son, his oldest son, making him who he wanted him to be. Robert Lincoln was never a big fan of his father,
Really.
and so when the legacy was left in his hands, he tried to create a demigod out of him who was larger than life and was the father he always wished he had. Now, there was nothing wrong with Lincoln as a father, but in most people's eyes, but in Robert's eyes, there was, And so that and of course Mary's grief and her emotionalism that tended to influence the way we thought about him after his death. Yeah, people. Well, it's kind of like anytime someone dies. I mean, I hope I get to go to my own funeral because I want to hear somebody say something nice about me. I mean,
Nice things about you.
yeah, they say nice. Well, I'm hoping you'll be at my funeral. So.
Oh, really? Oh my
And
goodness.
now, but here's the challenge. My doctor says I'm going to live to be 110.
Well, I'm 93 almost, so we're
Yes, yeah, you're getting there, right? So anyway, but
go ahead.
there are there are other people too, and yet one of the things we don't understand about Lincoln is that we kind of make this superhero man of steel about him, but really he was what you would call the highly sensitive child today in psychology. And you stop and think about the fact that here was a kid who couldn't stand violence, couldn't stand the sight of blood. He got on a stump one time when he was about, I don't know, 8 years old, and railed against his sister's boyfriend because he killed a cat. And this is on the prairie, farm country, and so that's just one example of his sensitive attitude. He was an empath, and probably was on the spectrum, as they call it today.
I was going to ask you. I have two boys who are on the spectrum, and
Right.
that doesn't mean. I mean, actually, they're pretty exceptional. It's taken as a negative thing, but I having those those boys, I recognize things in him, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of research today that is pointing to that was taboo back
Yes.
in the days when we were creating the image of Lincoln that we teach in our classrooms even today.
Now, see, that's fascinating, and I hadn't actually until we started to talk about it. I actually had never thought about that, but it's quite almost obvious. What do you think? Now, you've written a lot of books about, and you have a
Yes.
new book. You have a new book for children. I happen to
I have
know.
the new children's book, and this is about it's backwards for some reason, but this is about Lincoln's ballet. And the one of the books that I've written about Lincoln is for adults. It's the story of Lincoln's ballet and his relationship with his ballet. This is a story that brought down to the children's level, and it focuses on two things. One of them is it makes a big deal out of the fact that William Johnson, the valet, there he is, William Johnson, the valet, uh, assisted Lincoln in drafting the Gettysburg Address.
Really?
And they were observed doing that the night before the speech while Lincoln was putting on the final touches before he sent it on to Secretary of State Seward for his review. So, but the other thing that's in this story is that Lincoln really struggled with the whole question. He never struggled with liberty, with freedom, even emancipation. He was always in favor of emancipation. He just didn't want it to be disruptive. So he wanted to take a long time about it. But William Henry Johnson was a young black man, and one of the things that people did not have not appreciated nearly enough is the role that black soldiers played in the success of the Union Army at the end. Okay,
Absolutely.
now and Lincoln didn't want that to happen. He didn't want to put the black soldiers on the field. But he did, and they did an exceptional job. They elevated the fighting spirit of the European-born or European ancestor and descendants, rather, and And so that was a great victory. But William Johnson, probably because of his age and so forth, wanted to fight in the war. He was acquainted with Frederick Douglass, as were two other household employees at in the White House, who were members of the 16th Street Presbyterian Church, which was the hotbed of civil rights movement in Washington, D.C. And they were the two staff members were leaders in that. So he was familiar with this question, this basic concept that the book also addresses, the children's book, and that is the theme or the scenario that liberty is a house and equality is the ground it stands on. In the adult version of the book, I phrase it this way, that equality is the bedrock of freedom. Okay. Now, that gets me to kind of a comparison, I guess, of today to the time of Lincoln. Mm-hmm. I'm going to take it all the way back to the time that the first Europeans stepped foot on the continent, because nothing has really changed. We have always, the Europeans came out of a notion of it came out of the Dark Ages, came out of the medieval period, a feudal time, where you basically, the concept was that you have the king, you have the court, and then you have the people that carry them on their back. Yeah. Okay. Well, in Lincoln's day, you had the white people, you had the black people. No, I'm sorry. You had the plantation owners, you had the other white people, and you had the black people carrying everybody on their backs. So that was, and then today we have the oligarchs, we have the bankers, and we have the rest of us carrying them on our backs.
Yeah.
So that dynamic in terms of human, social structure and economic structure has never changed. It's just the players have changed, and we have always survived that. So odds are we will survive what we're going through today. But there was a risk that Lincoln faced. That's why they went to war. There was a risk that and as he put it in his Lincoln-Douglas debates, if Douglas won the presidency, then what we were going to have is we were going to have slavery all the way across the continent and all the way up and down the continent. And they wouldn't end with just slavery based on the color of your skin. They'd find other reasons to make people slaves, until there were just basically two classes of people, and that is the very wealthy and the rest of the people. And so that was unacceptable to Lincoln. That's what he fought against. And he believed that saving the Union was, in its current form at that day, was the only way that he could be successful in keeping everybody from being slaves. And that's a connection that a lot of people don't make, because they want to say, well, Lincoln, was he in favor of more in favor of the Union, saving the Union, or freeing the slaves? And the answer is he could only free the slaves, including prevent future generations of slavery, of not just black people, but all people. He could only do that by saving the Union. And there's plenty of evidence that was his way of thinking.
Well, and yes, it makes a lot of sense. But since we went by this twice now, the title of your new children's book, what if people would like to own one? What if they would like to take one of those books home for their very own self?
Okay, a couple things. Number one is on my website right now. They're available for pre-order. They'll be publicly released on June 1st. So you can pre-order them from my website, which is pretty simple. It's dlfowler.com. And you can see on the screen how you spell Fowler. D and L, is pretty much easy to spell. So dlfowler.com. The other thing is that I have almost 60 dates. I'll be traveling mostly around the Pacific Northwest, but I'll also be in Indianapolis in I'm going to be sometime in October. I think it is October. I'm going to be in Indianapolis for 5 days. I'm doing quite a few shows here in the Northwest. I'll be in Gettysburg on November 17th. And I'll be back in December in the Northwest for a closeout and another big show in Puyallup at the fairgrounds. So those are places where you can buy the books. You can buy them online directly from me. And that's the best way to buy them, by the way.
Certainly. Well, it sounds wonderful. And just because you have been your usual genial self, we're gonna hold you over for next week's program as well. Don't go anywhere and don't change your clothes. And we're going to talk about what is different now. Is what we're doing, let me see if I can say this, is what we're doing going to help make any changes, or are we still stuck in the same old cycle? Now, I'm going to put you under a box lid for a minute, and we'll reopen the show. But I think a lot of people are trying really hard, and I think I would just love to know what you're seeing. And the other thing I just have to say, the revelation of the day for me was the idea of Lincoln being on the spectrum. My son has Asperger's, and he's done very well indeed. But because I know what a struggle that is, I can see that, I can see him in a different light now.
Yes.
But that's one thing about those young people or the older ones. If they say, and this really goes with Lincoln, if they say they're going to do something, they're going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty exciting, and I thank you for it.
Okay, well, I appreciate. I'm glad I could do that. So thank you.
I'm glad you could do. Now you can have a drink of water or something if you want, and in just a few minutes we will record the next section of this very show, but we won't run it for a couple of weeks. So in case you think of something else that should go in it, too bad. Say an inspirational thing.
Oh, okay. I will say, and a lot of people don't understand this. This is inspirational, but I learned as a kid when I was being buffeted by my older brother often. Actually, the proper word is bullied.
Yeah.
I learned to just cover and persist, and so this too shall pass. I even have a T-shirt that says "This too shall pass," and I'm a strong believer that resilience is the answer to every problem.
And do you think that was as strong an influence for Lincoln as we hear about it a lot? But do you think it really was a strong influence for him?
It was. He always wanted to survive. He always wanted to get through it, and he just persisted. He just had the resilience to do that. And that's, by the way, that's what he identified in Rebecca Pomeroy.
That's interesting. Well,
resilience.
All right. Thank you, Larry Fowler, the Lincoln Guy. This is a production of the SOB Radio Network. SOB stands for Spunky Old Broads, and all the hosts are women over 50. So that's what we do for fun, and we'll look forward to talking to you all again. This is Dorothy Wilhelm, back in the pool now. Splash.